So welcome again to Maximizing Equipment ROI, how better field data reduces costs and downtime. In this session, we'll show you how real-time field data can help you maximize utilization, extend equipment life, and potentially cut fuel and repair costs. You'll see proven workflows for capturing data directly from the field and turning it into actionable insights to help for your shop, your fleet, and safety teams. And hopefully you'll walk away with strategies that you can put into practice immediately to reduce downtime and improve ROI. Finally, I'm Sarah Chu. I'm the product marketing manager here at HCSS and your host for today. But leading the content of the webinar will be Lisa Helms, our senior implementation specialist, David Katz, a senior engineer, but probably our leading expert on our fleet products. I think he knows more than even our product team. And we also have James Kaplan, an equipment operations manager from HEI Civil, giving us real-world examples about managing a large-scale fleet. So thank you all for joining us. And with that, I'll hand it off to Katz.
Thanks, Sarah. So yeah, like you had mentioned before, a lot of customers, a lot of construction companies have a problem. We're wasting utilization with our equipment. We're not doing services on time, if at all. And we have very expensive repair costs. So there's a lot of opportunity, a lot of areas that we can save money as a company with our fleet. I want to talk to you guys, and we want to talk to you guys today about tracking our meters consistently, all the different sources that we can pull that information from, where we're going to get that data, how effectively we can get our shop to communicate with the rest of the company. A lot of times, communication between the shop and operations is a bit of a challenge, so we'll jump into that, options available there. And then also the analytics, the reporting available to make the right decision when it comes to managing your fleet. So how does it hurt us when it comes to poor equipment data? What we hear from a lot of companies, and James, I'll have you share your stories as well, is we hear about equipment not being effectively utilized. We spent a lot of money purchasing, just owning a piece of equipment. And when it sits there, that's lost revenue. We lose money when we're having to do major repairs, maybe because we didn't do our services on time. And then also safety. We want to make sure our employees are safe when they're using our equipment. It can get very expensive if we're not careful. So, James, I want you to tell us some stories about what kind of issues you've run into when you haven't had the right fleet information.
We've ran into all kinds of stories, David. We've had a lot of idle equipment that we've been able, with visibility of meter tracking, that we've been able to see the difference in idle and working, and we've been able to move machines around strategically so that we've got those idle machines back working. We've also had changes in the way we've done our preventative maintenance, and we used to be on more of a reactive program, basing some of our maintenance on oil samples, and now we've come into the future and utilizing telematics data to give us current hours, help automate our preventative maintenance, and get equipment serviced on time and protect those investments.
Awesome. Thank you. So now that we've kind of covered the sort of problem a lot of companies face, let's dive into the foundations of success. What do we need to capture for our fleet to help reduce the cost of maintaining it and getting the right utilization? So probably near the top of the list is meter readings. When we have regular meter readings for our fleet, we're making sure we're doing our services on time. James alluded to this just a moment ago with telematics. With our GPS meter readings coming into the system, we're automatically getting those meter readings to push PM schedules and make sure we're doing them on time. Other key pieces of information will include the utilization, making sure we're billing for our equipment properly. I know not necessarily the shop is responsible for the billing side of things, but it is important to make sure we are earning the revenue of the equipment that we're taking care of. Fuel will be another pretty big operating cost. Alongside all the maintenance dollars, the service and repair dollars that we have in our fleet. What else, James? I'm going to ask you, what are other things that you find that you need to collect in order to successfully maintain your fleet?
So you've touched on the major ones. Utilization is probably the biggest driver for us here at HEI. Utilized machines, budgets are built on expected utilization, expected lifetime hours, expected run hours for a calendar year. Without that utilization and being able to track that utilization in those hours, you have a hard time covering your costs. And then with being able to track fuel using Fueler Plus, you're able to able to see all of your exact fuel costs, your burn rates, everything. So you're able to make better decisions with your fleet based on what you know you're consuming versus what the manufacturer says they think you might consume in fuel. And then just telematics, knowing exactly where your fleet is at any given time is huge to operations teams. It's huge to preventative maintenance technicians. It's huge to field technicians. They can go in E360, pull up their telematics tab and find their piece of equipment down to, a few feet. And some of these job sites we work on are massive. And that's probably been one of the biggest time savers with telematics is being able to find your equipment, to know where to go to fix it.
Awesome. Thank you. So I think that's kind of alluding to what we're going to be jumping into next. What solutions are available to help maintain our fleet, keep track of our equipment, and be successful on the fleet side of things, our assets? One of those key pieces is tracking preventive maintenance. So we see a lot of customers using Equipment 360 to keep track of all of our services. But in order to track our services, we need to have regular meter readings. So part of this presentation will be covering what sources do we have available in Equipment 360 to get regular meter readings. Whether it's from GPS like James is using, or is it, we don't have a GPS system, we have our field reporting hours. We'll show you all the different options available to get those regular meter readings in the system, so that way we can successfully do our services on time. So let's jump into our first question. So James, I think we already know the answer for you, but we're going to send this poll to everyone. How often do you get meter readings?
We get our meter readings daily. They come in around 4 o'clock in the morning and come in quickly.
Great. Yeah, so with that GPS integration, you just have the task set to say, I only want to pull in the meter readings once a day, and it just pulls from the GPS unit, that latest meter reading, to push those PM schedules. So for those of you listening in, thank you for all of the answers. I think I have a way to kind of share what the responses are. Let me know if that's showing up for y'all. Maybe a little react, a thumbs up if you can see the... Hey, there we go. Okay. So for the most part, we're getting pretty regular meter readings, daily or weekly, for about 70% of y'all. That's excellent. That's one of the keys for making sure that we can track our services on time. So with that said, knowing that we need to track our services, I'm going to hand us off to Lisa to talk about our premier solution when it comes to getting meter readings regularly.
Awesome. Thank you, Katz. So one of, the premier solution to get your meter readings daily with kind of more of a hands-off solution would be our telematics. So what telematics allows you to do is either pull from your OEM provider's telematics. So if you have a CAT
piece of equipment and has GPS already located in it, we can tap into that. Or we also have the ability to have a plug-in device that you can plug into those pieces that are maybe older and don't have, didn't come with GPS units. So, and do a plug-in to pull into Telematics. And then what that pull allows you to do is not just bring in your meter readings, but it also has the capability to bring in the locations, as James mentioned earlier. And one thing with the location that's really, really kind of fantastic is that pushes out where that piece of location is into Equipment 360 mechanic app hands. So it goes down into the mechanic app, and the mechanics can go ahead and get driving directions. If it is on a road, if it's in the middle of a field, they'll get close to it to see where that piece of equipment is to go out and go fix whatever that problem is they need to go fix on it. It also brings in the health of that piece of equipment. So the error codes that might pull for that piece of equipment basically come in to Equipment 360, and it gives them a little error code and says, hey, here's an alert. What do you want to do with it? If that alert for that error code is something that needs to be taken care of right away, they can turn it into a work order and then push that out to the mechanics to go out into the field or to go out and bring that piece of equipment back into the shop to get that error fixed. It's kind of cool because it also tracks your fuel and DEF if you're low on different liquids within that piece of equipment as well. And one other thing that I think is really kind of a cool factor is the usage. So it breaks down the equipment usage for whatever that piece of equipment ran, and it will give you the information as to whether it was actually running or if it was just idling or if it wasn't working at all. One of the error codes that comes out is if somebody has potentially unplugged the device or has unplugged the tracking services. So you'd be able to know, hey, that device got unplugged. There's a problem there. We need to go fix it. So telematics information flows into the website, which you're seeing an example of the OEM provider's connectivity on the screen right now in the presentation, but it also flows into E360, which allows your guys in E360 to see it. And then the locations flow into Heavy Job as well, where you can see where the location of that job site is, where that piece of equipment is. One thing that's also really nice about Telematics is you can set up geofencing. So you can put a little geofence around where that piece of equipment is to kind of notify you when it goes in and out. So that's kind of a cool feature as well. And then the usage. So when we're looking at usage, I want to know how am I using it? How much am I running this piece of equipment versus how much is it sitting? And is it kind of just chilling on that job site? Have they not used it for 3 weeks? That's really important information, especially when we're looking at job tracking and maybe repositioning your pieces of equipment into other job sites if one's not typically using it. So it gives you a lot of really good information inside Telematics. Katz, can you flip to the next slide, please? When we're talking about tracking utilization, this is an example of what one of the utilization reports that you can pull from inside E360, and Telematics feeds directly into here, as well as the hours captured in Heavy Job when they're job costing on the job site. So this kind of flows into tracking utilization on here. So you've got the asset management chart in front of you, which allows you to see what utilized hours were versus meter hours. So you can see what's been captured. Utilized is going to come from Heavy Job and tell you, hey, this is what was utilized on the time card. Your meter hours are going to be what actually comes in from Telematics. What's really nice inside of 360 is that there's another viewpoint that we can look at that even breaks it down farther to see how many hours was utilized versus how many hours were it was sitting idle. And Katz is going to open up his 360 and we'll do a little walkthrough of what that looks like for us. Give him 1 minute. So this is our Equipment 360. He's going to go into Fleet Analytics and then Asset Management. And within Asset Management under Fleet Analytics, there's a couple different reports that you can pull in here. You do need to go in and select either the equipment type or all equipment, and then you have the opportunity to select a few pieces or however many pieces you want to see. And here there's 3 different charts that we can look at. We're going to focus on the equipment utilization chart. And within the equipment utilization chart, there's 3 different reports that we can look at. So one is utilized versus meter hours, which that's coming from heavy job and meter hours being put in either from telematics or another avenue that we have available within our other products, such as heavy job, or from the work orders from Equipment 360. And then you also have the other 2 pieces, the other 2 reports available for you in here. One is that meter versus expected, and then utilized versus expected. So if you do have Equipment 360, each piece of equipment, you have the opportunity to set up expected hours, and then you can compare and contrast what those expected hours will bring up for you versus what's actually occurred based on the meter or utilized hours from heavy job. So here's what this chart looks like. We did see this graph. This is really nice part and piece on the left-hand side for the equipment utilization. Kat's just happened to grab all history for all of his dozers. This gives you the ability to see what has actually been tracked within hours recorded on the actual operation side versus what meter readings have come in. So you'll notice on this particular piece of equipment Kat's has highlighted, the hours are less than half of actually what's been recorded and job costed inside heavy job versus what that piece of equipment's actually been run. So on here, it gives you kind of an idea of, hey, what happened? This allows you to kind of go back and track and see, hey, what happened? Why weren't all the hours recorded? Or why do we have too many hours recorded? So you get to kind of have that viewpoint into what's going on with our meters, and why is it running so much if we're not job costing it? So then we're not accounting for how much that piece of equipment's actually costing us to run. And the viewpoint in the upper right-hand corner is where you get to see the grid action, the grid view. So you'll go up there and you'll hit show data series, and this gives you the viewpoint of what piece of equipment we're looking at, and then where the meters have come from. So you get to see the current lifetime as well as the idle versus runtime. So you'll see you've got piece of equipment 2001, and you've got the idle time in there is 1500, but the actual physical runtime is 2180. So you'll be able to come in and see, hey, what happened to that piece of equipment? Did it run the whole time? Is that maybe why we didn't account for it in heavy job and job costed appropriately versus what we see here in 360? So it kind of is a good checks and balance for making sure your pieces of equipment are being job costed if they're not. I know some companies, and I don't know how many companies on here do this, but some companies do say, hey, you know what? We job cost our piece of equipment 8 hours a day every day, just because that's how we bid it and that's how we want to job cost it inside heavy job. So then when you're in E360 and you're looking at the meters versus utilized, it would make sense to have a huge variance like CATS does, because maybe that piece of equipment was used 10 to 15 hours a day instead of just 8 hours a day, but we're only capturing 8 hours of the cost on the operation side. But when you come into the equipment side, we care about on the equipment side, the actual, what do we physically run that? So, because we need to make sure our preventative maintenance occurs off of that runtime, not what we job costed. So this gives you a little bit more insight and helps you make better decisions. It also gives you an idea of how much it's costing you to maintain it. So you'll see in Katz's report, he's got his maintenance cost in here as well. So that's where utilization comes into play, and this is how deep you can dive into it. If your utilization is accurate and your cost to your piece of equipment, where you've got your depreciation set up, you've got your maintenance cost and already put in here, the best part is it'll give you a cost per meter hour. And that even plays back into, you can see how much does this piece of equipment cost me to own and operate it which would be your cost per utilization. So you can see how much does it cost me, and then that could flow back into your bidding process to make sure that when we bid our jobs that we're costing it at a rate that will cover what the cost is we see here for maintenance and ownership and operating. So it's kind of a big circle when you look at utilization, helping you to understand we utilize it, we run it, and where does the cost get to? And this and 360 allows you to kind of see this is the cost that we've seen come in for this piece of equipment and how much it costs per hour. On that asset management, can you pop back to that grid view? That cost per meter hour also shows on that grid view at the very top. So you can see your operating costs versus utilized costs. So that kind of helps you dial in if you're not sure if you're costing enough to your jobs when you're looking at the operations side. So that is meter utilization and where it flows into E360 from Telematics, and it helps you get a better understanding of what's happening with our piece of equipment and from across the suite of products, right? So we've got a lot of connective parts and pieces here that work together to give you this data. Now, if you don't have heavy job, that's okay. You also have the import utilization aspect. So you'd be able to take a spreadsheet and import your utilization to get the graphs to actually work appropriately for you if you wanted to use that. So there's a couple different ways that information can flow into here. If you don't have telematics and you don't have heavy job, you have that import utilization available as well. So I think we have another poll question coming up. So I'll have Katz, if you want to go back to the presentation, please.
While I'm getting that pulled up, I'd love to hear from James as well. Sort of, how do you go about reporting on utilization versus actual runtime hours? And how does that help you make decisions for managing your fleet?
So when it comes to equipment utilization versus runtime hours, I think we all know that your utilization, your charged hours are where we recoup our costs, our operating costs for those machines. And when we see runtime hours higher than utilization hours, it gives us all a reminder. We've shared visibility with our operations managers and our supervisors in the field to make sure that we're charging time to those machines, because that's how we're going to recoup our owning and operating costs. And it's been positive. It's a work in progress here to try to get everybody to remember it's always the small machines. Hey, I jumped in this loader for an hour, or we ran this generator for half a day. But the charging time to those, recapturing that time allows us to maintain those and even justify replacements of those. If you have a machine that you're never coding time against or utilizing, it's hard to justify replacing that with a new machine. So it all works in everybody's favor to charge hours against machine utilized machines.
Awesome. Thanks for that, James. And I guess to touch and expand on that a little bit more, I'm going to bring us back to Equipment 360 to give you one of those reports that's available to identify, is it time to buy another unit? Is it, does it not make sense to buy one because we're not getting enough utilization? So I'm going to go to our churn chart here and run an analysis, let's just say on my BH units, my backhoes. I've told the system the expected life I'm going to get out of each of these units, and it's going to project over the next 5 years, if we keep it at that same rate, how much life do we have left? As we're in the red for 3 of these units, these are 130% past my expected life. So these things are either going to need major capitalized repairs to make them like new again, keep them in my fleet, or it's going to be time to sell them and I'll need to find something new. But then that's the next question. Maybe we have to go to our executives and come up with a good enough argument to say, hey, we've got these 3 units that are reaching end of life. Should we buy 3 more? Well, let's look at the actual historicals. So right in this chart, I can see the historical hours per year. And, some of them, 2 of these units, I've gotten over 2,000 hours a year, which is generally a pretty good benchmark to hit. Actually, before I dive into even that, what's your benchmark, James, for hours per year for your fleet, or does it depend on type?
So our benchmarks are very based on type, based on size. A Cat D8 dozer, a D9 dozer, we believe is a rebuildable machine. So its expected life will be a lot longer than, say, a D3 that isn't a builder. But where you're going with your historical hours per year, that's helped us identify maybe we have a misfit machine in our fleet. Here we heavily utilize our finished D6 dozers with a 6-way blade. Well, we have several other D6s with a straight blade in our fleet, and we see that those D6s with the 6-way blade get utilized twice as much as that straight blade D6. So now we know, hey, when that straight blade D6 retires or is ready to be disposed of, let's not rebuild that one. Let's not tune that one up. Let's replace it with a 6-way blade, and then we'll get better utilization out of it.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So yeah, with that, let's hop back into Lisa's portion of the presentation. We'll go back to the slides and do that next poll question. Oh, Lisa, I'm sorry. I may have muted you.
Oh, sorry about that. So James, if you want to give us your experience with how does your company track fuel and dispense fuel? And Katz, can you make that poll available for everybody, please?
So we dispense fuel. We have a fleet of fuel trucks with fueler oilers, and we track our fuel with Fueler Plus from HCSS.
Awesome. We'll give that poll a few minutes for everybody to chime in. It looks like still going. It looks like the majority has lube techs, and then it's like lube techs and paper logs are the majority of what everybody kind of is running off of. So with that being said, if you do have a lube tech or you have accounting going ahead and doing paper logs, we do have Fueler Plus that helps with tracking fuel and your fuel costs, which as having a lube tech do it and running around, I'm curious to know if the lube techs are tracking it on paper or how they're tracking it. If you want to go ahead and stop sharing the poll, and then we'll get into talking a little bit about Fueler Plus and the information that can be tracked in there. So Fueler Plus has a couple different ways to use it. It is kind of an attachment that opens up with, it works well with Equipment 360. And in Fueler Plus, there is a couple different ways information can be put into Fueler Plus to track your fuel. One way is via the time cards and heavy job, and giving that, opening that up to your foreman and having them be able to track not just fuel types, but also they could track any liquid type. So if you had hydraulic fluid that they're refilling, or if they're filling oil or anything like that, they would have the ability to fill that as well if you set it up that way. So they can track it, put in what type of fuel they're putting into those pieces of equipment or trucks, as well as how much they put in and where did it come from. So they have the ability to go ahead and put that in, and then the cost is added in Fueler Plus to see how much that piece of equipment is consuming fuel and how much that fuel is associated with that. The other way is the actual Fueler Plus, and you can upload. So if you have gas cards that you give to your if that you give to your foreman or people operating your trucks and fuel, any piece of equipment that could be fueled. The gas cards typically come in. You can get a spreadsheet and import that spreadsheet into Fueler Plus. So for the accounting side of things, that typically is just a document you import. And then we have Fueler Plus Field App for lube techs. So this is pretty awesome. It works for the lube techs, whereas as they're going from job site to job site and they're fueling different pieces of equipment, they get to go in, they have the opportunity to come in here and transfer fluids from one container to the other. You can also set a route for them in here, as well as if you wanted to pull time. If you have a few lube techs and it was worth creating an export for payroll, they have the ability to do a time card. So with that, this is what it looks like from the fueler side. So the fueler gets to go on location. They'll go to a job site. So we've got Kat's pulled up his job site in Houston, and then you have the pieces of equipment that are on the job site, and you just select a piece of equipment, and then they can even say, hey, you know what, this equipment, we're going to fuel it. They have the opportunity to say, hey, this piece of equipment is no longer here. Not sure why it's showing up on this job site in my list. If the piece of equipment's no longer on that job site, maybe it hasn't been moved yet. If you have telematics, it'll automatically be moved off. If you don't, then it's got to be moved off of via time card or somebody manually doing that. So to fuel the piece of equipment, he's going to go ahead and click on fuel. And this is where they get to decide what their source tank is, how much fuel they did. They put their meter readings or odometer readings in here as well. And they can put any notes on that piece of equipment. So if they notate that there's an issue, hey, there's a leak, there's something that's not right with it, they can put a note on there, and that'll transition into the reporting side. Once he hits done, you've got that fuel taken care of in here, and he can move on to the next one. He would just hit finish once he's done with all of his fueling for that particular location. So that is how Fueler, very quick intro to what Fueler Plus on the app for a fuel lube tech would look like. So it allows you to kind of capture the cost. So the next poll question I think is coming up that Kat's flipped to. And James, if you can give us some insight into how does your field communicate with the shop?
So within the last year or so, we went from the phone call, spreadsheet, messenger pigeon method of supervisors communicating broken down machines or repairs needed to utilizing HCSS maintenance requests that coincide with heavy job and E360. So now all of our equipment needs are communicated through maintenance request.
Awesome. So with the next piece that we're going to talk about in maintaining our fleet is how can we improve that communication and get meter readings at the same time to push our PM schedules forward. So I guess just quick share results for the poll. Looks like for the most part, we are using phone calls, but we do have some folks using HCSS to improve that communication. So this next piece that we're going through here is field communication, getting meter readings either from a proactive approach of doing an equipment inspection or a bit more reactive, something went wrong. We're just going to report a deficiency or something broke down to the shop. I'm going to start sharing my screen and I'll give y'all a very quick walkthrough of the process, how easy it is for your field personnel to do, and how you can even give it to your operators to do their inspections if they're doing it on paper today and you want an electronic streamlined format. So right from that field application, we're going to tap on inspections. If I had a QR code on my piece of equipment, I could just go scan it and it'll automatically load the inspection. In this case, I don't have the unit in front of me, so I'm just going to manually select from the list. Again, I'm showing just some example inspection here, but you're going to be able to set up whatever inspections your company needs in the system. Maybe it copies from one of the thousands of templates that we have in the system, or you built your own from scratch. We'll support it either way. So as soon as I've selected my inspection, it's going to auto-populate with some of the header information for my operator. What day is it? What job am I on? And my name. Next, I'm going to select which piece of equipment I'm doing an inspection on. And the very first piece we ask after you select your equipment is, what's the meter reading? So this will be another key way to get meter readings into Equipment 360 to track our fleet if we're not using a system like Telematics or GPS integrations. So that last meter reading, that is a direct integration to 360. So that's where it's reading from, right from the shop management system. Oh. And now I've got my meter reading that will push to 360 once I hit complete and finish. As far as the inspection goes, though, it's going to probably be fairly similar to the paper format that we're using today. If something passes inspection, you'll hit the green check mark. If something is maybe not applicable, you might hit NA. And then if there are any issues with something, you'll hit the exclamation point. It'll turn red. Immediately, you'll see the notify shop, an easy, streamlined communication that sends an alert to Equipment 360 that there is a deficiency, something that needs to be corrected. It still gets to get reviewed by a shop manager. So the shop manager gets to determine, yep, this is something I'm going to turn into a work order. I'm going to sign out to someone. Or maybe it's low priority and we're going to dismiss it or stick it on the backlog. I'm going to put in some notes here. Oil is leaking from the left cylinder. We can throw in some pictures too, so that way the shop knows what we're talking about. Oh. So we've got a picture in there, and then we can continue on with the rest of our inspection. Right now, I'm going to pencil whip the rest of this inspection, but it's worth mentioning there is an audit. A manager can easily see that I pencil whipped after I submit this inspection, completed it in 2 minutes rather than maybe the 10, 20 minutes it takes to do a proper inspection. So that way, if you are having an issue with your operators not doing proper inspections, we can address it with them because we're getting that data. So this fires off, not only saves into a collection of all the inspections that have been done, but it alerts the shop saying, hey, we've got an issue that needs to be addressed. Before we walk into the shop manager's point of view of addressing those issues, there is another way that the field can communicate with the shop, and that's with just a simple maintenance request. Tell me what job you're on. Tell me what piece of equipment's giving you issues. Put in a brief description and attach some pictures. So I'll fill this out now. It fell. So we've got all the information the shop needs to address our issues, and it sends off for them to review and address. So what's the next piece? We've talked about how we can gather better information from the field. Let's look at the shop management point of view of addressing those issues, turning them into work orders so that they can be resolved in a timely fashion, reducing our downtime. So if you're not familiar with this system here, this is Equipment 360's Manager Dashboard. It's the very first screen that you see when you log into the system. A shop manager has the ability to review the the mechanics time cards here. They have the ability to review all the work orders that are in progress, things that are not yet closed. And then finally, the alerts. Everything that Equipment 360 is trying to tell you about your fleet, you're going to see here in this alerts dashboard. I'm actually going to open up the floor to James. What are some things that you use most regularly from the alerts dashboard? What kind of alerts are you getting?
So I have several different alerts turned on. Maintenance requests, I actually don't pay much attention to. Right now, I have a supervisor that takes care of those maintenance requests alerts. The ones I primarily handle are warranties and parts inventory. We inventory some of our more expensive parts. Actually, we inventory a lot of parts, but those are a few things that I have set as alerts on my dashboard. But here at HEI, we monitor PMs, we monitor maintenance requests, we monitor warranties, we monitor inventories. I think so. We have too many fault codes to monitor. It's become white noise. So we turned off fault code monitoring. But those 4 pieces are what me and my team are looking at every day. Also, we have some kind of obscure ones that come up that we have set alerts for, like specific county overweight permits for trucks that pop up once a year. We turn those alerts on, so that way we've set text alerts and email alerts with those. So not only do we get an alert on our dashboard, I get my dispatcher, my DOT officer, and myself, we all get a text message. Hey, this truck's due for this overweight permit. It's fantastic use of those alerts.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So as far as addressing an alert goes, all we need to do to review it is double click on it. It'll give you a pop-up window where the shop manager can review the request, see the details, and maybe turn it into a work order. It's going to attach all of these details to either a new work order or maybe one of the work orders that I already have open for that unit. In this example, I'm going to show us creating a brand new work order from scratch from that alert. You can see how it auto-populates all the information. It's attached to the document. And now I'm going to assign it out to one of my mechanics. There we go. That work order is now in the system. It's got an open status. My mechanic has gotten a push notification to their iPad letting them know that this needs to be addressed. A question came up from the chat. Notifications. Can our field personnel get notifications as the status of these work orders change? And the answer is yes and no. So from Heavy Job, the mobile app that we were showing off a second ago, there isn't really a way to get a text message notification on the status updates of your work orders. However, as of our latest update, which should be coming out in the next week or so, if you submit a maintenance request from the web portal, maintenancerequest.com or maintenancerequest.hcssapps.com, I think we've also abbreviated it to just mr.hcsssapps.com. If you submit a request from here, there is a little toggle where you can get text message notifications on your request. Not necessarily working today, even though you might see the toggle, but as of the next update, call into our support team if you already have Equipment 360, and you'll be able to start getting those text messages for the repair status of your requests submitted through here.
So David, at one point when that was working, we found that here extremely beneficial to have that two-way communication back to the supervisor that submitted that maintenance request, because we updated some of our status tags, and we updated to those like work in progress or work order created waiting for a technician or waiting for parts. And as the technicians update those statuses on their E360 mobile app, when they update those, it sends out those text messages to that supervisor. He sees those status changes, so he's not in the lurch. He knows, hey, they've got it. they're working on it. It should be done today. I'll bring in an operator for that machine tomorrow. So it keeps the flow going well.
Perfect. Probably also saves you from a couple of phone calls. Hey, what's the status of this work order?
Definitely saves a lot of back and forth phone calls, text messages, all that.
Awesome. Alrighty. So that's going to wrap up our section on the field requests, how they can effectively communicate to the shop, how we can even get meter readings from them if we're not using like a GPS system. There was one more way that I wanted to show off a meter reading collection, and that's going to be from the foreman's time card. So as they're filling out their timesheet, if they've got equipment that they're reporting usage for, not only can they report, hey, I used this unit for, 8 hours today, but if they tap on it, they can put in a meter off value. That meter off is the meter reading at the end of their shift, at the end of the day, and that will push to Equipment 360 to push those PM schedules forward. So another alternative option if we're not using a GPS system to get those regular meter readings.
So David, we have Heavy Job and Telematics working side by side. So more or less we don't like to introduce human error. Human error can happen anytime somebody's keying in a meter entry. So our primary is Telematics. Our secondary, if that GPS telematics device fails, we have it set to fail over to Heavy Job. So that way, even if there's an electrical issue with that machine and its box quits working, it still keeps getting what we believe to be fairly accurate meter readings. We continue to see its uptick in meters. So it's great to see those two working side by side as a failover.
Perfect. Love to hear it. And I guess I would also address maybe if there are some pieces of equipment or assets in the fleet that we don't necessarily put GPS on. If we only had like a partial GPS outfitted fleet, we could capture meter readings that way. Alrighty. So I guess to bring this all together, the different solutions that we have available to solve the problems of a lot of construction companies with regards to managing the fleet. Heavy Job for tracking utilization hours, the time card reported hours of how much that piece of equipment got reported. Having them have an easy tool to submit inspections and maintenance requests, submitting their issues, the equipment deficiencies directly to the shop. Heavy Job and safety kind of go hand in hand for that because from the field's perspective, it's all one application. We also have Equipment 360, sort of the core of the shop management, the asset management solution, by tracking our entire fleet, gathering those meter readings from different sources, tracking the work orders, the services that we do to each asset, understanding how much we use each piece of equipment and how much it costs us. Fueler Plus also running in tandem with Equipment 360, getting that wet rate for our fleet rather than just the dry rate, I guess. And then finally, Telematics is that sort of premier solution for theft prevention, meter tracking, fault code collection, and the location of the unit to help out our field folks. So another way to visualize this sort of integration across softwares is this little diagram. It will tell you by application what kind of information is feeding into Equipment 360 and from where. I'll leave this up on the screen in case anyone wants to grab a screenshot. But I think we are ready to move into our Q&A. So I did see a couple of questions come through, but feel free to ask additional questions either in the chat or in the Q&A section. And we'll spend some time going through some answers before we wrap up this webinar. Okay, so one of the questions I see here, other costs are repairs to equipment and knowing when, oh yeah, shoot. Thank you for that heads up. Another piece of information that Equipment 360 is going to give you is just the documentation, the information that we track on each asset, such as warranty. If you've got a piece of equipment that is brand new, it's got a bumper to bumper warranty, we keep track of that in Equipment 360. We let your shop manager, your mechanics know as they're creating or opening up that work order, they can see that this unit has active warranty, and maybe we can get this repair or service covered under that warranty. James, yeah.
So warranties have become an SOP for us here. Before a technician creates a new work order, one of the things we've always advised is go check that warranty. We have we do machine rebuilds that come with dealer warranties or manufacturer's warranties on them. So we will re-up those warranties, and it's easy to go look at an old bulldozer and think, oh, no warranty on it, it's old. But when you go check that warranty tab and you have that little alert indicator, hey, this thing's got a warranty on it, it ends up saving a lot of cost.
Awesome. Great to hear. Another question that came in was, can your meter readings give you the actual usage versus the idle time? Without a system like GPS or our telematics integrations, you would not be able to see the meter reading versus the idle time. That just comes from telematics at the moment. We answered the question of, is there a way to notify the sender of the maintenance request, like the status change of those work orders? Any methods or strategies to get foremen who have been pushed on production for years to understand the importance of PMs, inspections, etc.? How do you explain the importance of managing your fleet to your foreman, James?
I always go with the downtime approach. You can choose when it goes down, or it chooses for you. And when it chooses for you that it's going to go down, that either shuts production down, there's days where it'll shut a complete job down. It sends operators home, and most foremen are team leads. They care about their crew, and they want to see their guys there working every day, getting a paycheck. So that's the angle of approach I always take with them, that preventative maintenance or shutting down a machine before a major failure is necessary. And I've gotten good results with it. I won't say perfect results, and you still have some of the old school mentality that run her till she blows. Those are the guys I have a hard time getting through to, but generally people like choice. And if you can choose when it's down and schedule that downtime versus it scheduling it for you, you get the best results.
Awesome. Thank you. Another question that came in was maintenance request coming through a cell phone instead of a tablet. Absolutely. For the heavy job mobile application, there's not only the tablet app that I showed in this demonstration, but there is also an iPhone and an Android application. Those maintenance requests can be submitted through there. For telematics idle time calculation, it is a calculation, but it's also looking, it's effectively asking the ECU for, the RPM on that unit over its time. Because if it's, a low RPM, we can assume that unit is idling. That's where we get those idle hours from. And as soon as it's above a certain RPM, then we know it's non-idle time. It's actual runtime hours. Another question that came in was tracking fuel in auxiliary tanks attached to vehicles, like maybe our saddle tanks in our foreman's trucks. How do y'all track that today, James?
So we've ventured down the avenue of upfitting our supervisors' trucks with fuel meters and setting them up as fuel trucks in Fueler Plus, and having them dispense fuel utilizing heavy job. We've discussed it, and currently what we're doing today is we're tracking off of their fuel cards. off of that provider. And we have different cost codes that they'll put in instead of a mileage. Maybe they'll put in one cost code for unleaded gasoline for their demo saws, or they'll put in another cost code for gasoline for their pickup truck. And then maybe they'll put in another cost code for diesel fuel. And those all end up being equipment indirect charges. The reason why we opted not to track our fuel out of those Foreman's truck L tanks, slip tanks, we did a pretty deep dive into our fuel consumption, and we said, hey, our fuelers have pumped this much red dye diesel in our fleet this year, and the percentage of fuel that was pumped or purchased out and used in those slip tanks was X. And we determined that we were 0.2% of our fuel consumed in our fleet came through those Foreman's L tanks. So then it became, is the juice worth the squeeze? Do we invest tens of thousands of dollars in metering and setting up all these Foreman and hoping that they charge fuel? Or do we just say, yeah, it's 0.2%. It's not that big of a deal in comparison to the fuel that we use, the red fuel that we pump out of bulk.
Awesome. Thank you for that insight. For those who do have, maybe a larger percentage of fuel that gets tracked through those auxiliary tanks, we do have a solution within Heavy Job and Fueler Plus. So this got kind of shown a little bit in the presentation, one of those slides, but right from the Foreman's time card, they can track their fuel dispenses right from their auxiliary tank. So if they dispense, let's say, off-road diesel into a small tool, into a major piece of equipment, they're going to tap on the unit that's on their time card. They're going to hit dispense fuel, and they're going to say what kind of fuel it was, how many gallons they dispensed, and where did that fuel come from, in which case it came from their auxiliary tank. So as soon as they fill this out and hit send to Fueler Plus, it goes to the Fueler Plus system. It ties it to the unit that we dispensed into, and then we get an idea of how many gallons we're putting into each unit.
All right. I think we're coming up on time, everyone. So I want to take a moment and thank our speakers, James, David, and Lisa. Thank you for sharing your expertise and your insights on all things fleet and ROI. Also, if you really like this webinar, we have plenty more on fleet webinars or on Heavy Job and Heavy Bid, our other platforms. So keep an eye out for other webinars. Thank you all.
Visit hcss.com to learn more.